Considering the information we have thus far gotten about Rayla and her parents, I think it's reasonable to expect that there will be a reunion between them at some point in the next few seasons of the show. They will be freed from the coins, and Rayla will see them again. And to a certain extent, this reunion will be joyous. It will be beautiful. She will declare that she knows they are not criminals, and she knows their reputation as traitors is undeserved. And the easy way for the show to proceed would be for her parents to embrace her unconditionally and not question any of her choices, and form an ideal and warm and mutually beneficial bond between parents and children. But I hope the show does not do that, because number one, I don't think it's necessarily set up in the narrative. I think the bond between Rayla and her parents is much more jagged and fractured than a simplistic reunion like the one I just described would fit, and also it would not be particularly interesting narratively. Because Rayla needs, I believe, this confrontation with the elves. And the best way, the most impactful, the most affecting, the most concrete way for the show to do this would be to not simply have her confront a representative of the elves, that could be anyone, but a specific person or people that she cares about and deeply respects. Rayla, stubborn as she is, nonetheless expresses hesitation toward disobeying the people she deeply cares about. She wants to be good. She wants to excel by the standards of her society. She wants to be the person her parents aspired for her to be. That desire fades to a degree when she believes that her parents are traitors, but as deeply she wants to be like Runan, and it is because of that desire, because of that yearning to escape loneliness, to escape this deep sense of deracinated isolation, this deep sense of friction between her frail, isolated self and the environment around her, that she accepts a lot of the values of Runan and of the assassins. Yet she cannot fully commit to these values. Runan can. He is hardened. He is a genuine believer in his convictions. But Rayla is, despite herself, rather affected by the sensory experiences she undergoes. She cannot help but examine her existing systems of belief and understanding by how they fare as a matrix to respond to these feelings she has. And constantly she finds herself going against these codes that she says that she believes, that she genuinely wants to believe, but she can't. She can't be an assassin. She can't be a loyal elf. She can't simply accept the mores and the standards of elven society. She's an outsider because of her parents, but as importantly, she's an outsider by choice. She cannot really go back to being a part of elven society anymore because she fundamentally has serious critiques of that society. maybe not on a systematic political level, but on a personal level, she feels that she cannot fit back in to that society. To the extent that she ever was a part of that society, she can't be anymore. Her parents, though they are still considered traitors by the elves, are exemplars of that society. They are loyal. They are deeply patriotic. They believe in the basic smallness and pettiness of humanity, it's implied. Certainly, they do not have a high opinion of Viren and perhaps even underestimate him a little. And they fundamentally are stoic and restrained. Rayla does not seem to have been particularly warm with her parents, even when she still considered herself close to them. They did not have these robust discussions around the dinner table. They did not speak openly about their lives to their daughter. And perhaps that's reasonable. Perhaps there is no single correct model for how a family should behave. No single standard that all families should try to aspire to. But nonetheless, the show implies that Rayla's rather restrictive and rather non-emotional family upbringing led her to be a person who cannot open up to others in the way that would be beneficial to her. This causes her significant problems in her relationships throughout the show, particularly in her relationship with Callum. So there is this divide between Rayla and her parents and what her parents represent, and as Rayla continues to grow and evolve and accumulate insights gained through her experiences, that divide is only growing to grow wider. Thus, there is going to be a divide between expectations and reality. I always think of that wonderful scene in 500 Days of Summer, great movie, wherein the film employs a split screen, and on one side there are the expectations of the protagonist, Tom, which are very warm and sentimental and romantic, and then there is the reality, which is extremely banal, not horrific, just ordinary. He fails to reconnect with the woman he deeply cares for. There is inevitably a kind of mismatch between our ideals and the projections we have of ourselves and others, and our experience of the world, and the inevitably changing and transforming reality of the world. Even if a physical environment does not change, our perception of it does. I always think of the famous quote by the Greek philosopher Heraclitus about how no man walks in the same river twice. The river changes, and so do you. The world is constantly amorphous. The philosopher Martin Heidegger, writing many, many centuries later, talks quite comprehensively about how what we consider the world is inevitably our own construction. That does not mean we make it by ourselves, but that our beings, our identities, our conceptions of ourselves are inevitably tied to the world and the world itself as we perceive it, not simply in terms of material objects, but in terms of the associations and impressions that accrue to those objects, inevitably shifts based on ourselves. There's this kind of amorphous mutualism. We construct these narratives of ourselves as this solid, firm, observational subject that sees the world reliably, that has a firm set of beliefs and convictions, but ultimately, that very self, being tied to the world, being inevitably tied to the world, is also always in the process of changing. You walk into a room that you knew so well when you were a kid. Maybe it's your childhood bedroom, maybe it's a classroom where you had a lot of fun memories when you were a little kid, and you perceive it as an adult, and it's not the same as it was. How you perceived it, how you saw it, was inevitably connected to an image of yourself that no longer exists, that necessarily degrades. And yet, even having that experience, even having that sense of realization, that sense of things are not as they were, itself leads to a change in the self. It leads to a change in our conceptions of our person, our conceptions of our basic subjecthood, our basic being in the world. We are not ever as we were before. And accepting that idea of constant change, of the constant end of the static images that we form of ourselves in the world, can be scary. It can be quite terrifying. It's much safer and much more comforting to adhere to easy preconceived notions about who we are, and easy hopes about what our interactions with others will be. But inevitably, when these notions become divorced from our actual experience of the world, they lose all truth, all value. They become hollow. And this is a great cause of anxiety, angst. Rayla certainly has these expectations for what her relationship with her parents should be like. She might have her own expectations about how they will perceive Callum, and she might be disappointed. And that's okay. Disappointment is the rain that brings growth. It's a devastating rain sometimes, but it's a necessary, fertilizing one. Rayla needs to be able to see her parents for what they are, as decent perhaps, but flawed individuals that she should learn from, but ultimately grow beyond. So thank you all for watching. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon if you can, or do you want to see more videos like this before anyone else. Keep watching The Dragon Prince. I can't believe the show is approaching its end. We will probably get the last 2 seasons within the next few years. It's been a wonderful run with y'all. And I hope you don't grow too tired of me using these grandiose, magniloquent, philosophical comparisons as a way to discuss a show like this. Anyway, adios, comrades.